Hello there, my sleepy fellows. I'm glad you've joined me tonight. The world beyond your window has grown quiet now. The last birds have tucked themselves beneath leafy branches. The soft hum of the evening has settled over the hills, and Middle-earth itself leans gently into slumber. You don't need to go anywhere. Just settle in, breathe slow and easy, and let me take you to a place where the grass grows thick and green, where the rivers murmur softly along their winding beds, and the hills roll on and on like a gentle dream. We begin in the Shire, or rather, before it was ever called the Shire, before hobbits tilled the soil, before round doors dotted the hillsides, long, long ago, when the land was still wild, quiet, full of secrets waiting beneath the grass and stone. A time forgotten by most, but still remembered by the earth. And tonight, we'll listen. So, let's begin. Settle in now, breathe easy, and let your imagination drift gently across the hills. Tonight, we'll wander through the green hills of what we now know as the Shire, though in the quiet time of this story, the land had no name upon maps, no borders marked in ink, only the soft rolling earth, stretching peaceful and wild beneath the sky. Long before hobbits dug their cozy homes into the hillsides, before smoke curled from chimneys and round doors dotted the lanes, these gentle lands held secrets all their own, ancient things hidden beneath the moss and meadow, forgotten paths winding through quiet forests, stones carved by hands long faded from the world. And though time would one day tame these hills, though gardens would grow and laughter would fill the air, the land remembers. Tonight, we'll walk softly into that memory. We'll meet a quiet soul drawn by wonder, follow their footsteps along forgotten trails, and together we'll listen for the hum beneath the grass, the hush of old stories lingering in the breeze, the gentle pull of mystery waiting beneath the roots of the hills. And if you enjoy these slow, peaceful wanderings through Middle-earth, these stories wrapped in calm and wonder, I invite you to stay a while longer, like subscribe, or drift off into another sleepy tale whenever your heart desires. But for now, breathe deep. The secrets of the green hills are waiting, quiet and patient, beneath the stars. His name was Thalan, not a hobbit, for they had not yet come to this gentle land, nor a dwarf, nor one of the great kings of men. Thalan was simple in his ways, quiet in his heart, one of the wandering folk that walked the edges of Middle-earth, treading softly where the world still whispered its oldest songs. Tall and slender, with dark hair that curled like vines at his collar, and eyes as green as the moss along the streams, Thalan carried with him the quiet patience of one who belonged to no town, no banner, no master, but only to the land itself. His cloak was worn at the edges, the leather of his boots softened by countless miles, but his steps were as light as the breeze that rustled the wild grasses. It was curiosity that had drawn him here, to these hills, so soft, so green, rolling like gentle waves beneath the sky. A forgotten stretch of Middle-earth, unnamed on maps, untouched by stone walls or iron gates. The land, still wild and free, hummed beneath his feet, its song low and steady, like the memory of something long hidden. The forests that crept along the edges of the hills were thick with old oaks and whispering pines, their branches creaking softly as if remembering secrets the world had nearly forgotten. The rivers ran clear and cool, their waters curling between the stones like silver ribbons beneath the sunlight. And the hills themselves, they watched. Thalan could feel it, the quiet presence beneath the grass, the faint hum threaded through the soil, like a voice too old for words, too patient to rush. It wasn't fear that stirred him, nor danger, only wonder, for there were tales, faint and fading, of things that came before, of quiet places where the world kept its oldest truths, tucked gently beneath moss and root, where even the land itself remembered that what time tried to bury. And Thalan, with his careful hands and curious eyes, had come to listen, not to conquer, not to claim, but to walk, to wonder, and to uncover, softly, whatever secrets the green hills still carried beneath the turning sky. The days in the green hills passed with a kind of stillness only the oldest corners of Middle-earth knew. Thalan rose each morning with the soft glow of dawn painting the sky, the pale light slipping over the gentle slopes, casting long shadows across the sea of grass that stretched, endless and quiet, beneath the soft curve of the horizon. The land was untouched here, wild yet calm. No roads marked the hills. No chimneys sent their smoke curling into the sky. Only soft footpaths worn by deer and foxes, and the meandering tracks of rivers that whispered gently to the stones as they passed. Thalan's camp was simple, nestled between a pair of mossy stones at the crest of a hill, shielded by a low stand of birch trees whose leaves fluttered silver and green in the morning breeze. His fire was small, its coals banked low beneath the ashes from the night before. He preferred it that way. Enough to warm his tea, but never so large as to disturb the quiet rhythm of the hills. His mornings were slow, peaceful, a pot of steeped herbs warming in the firelight, the soft crunch of bread beside him, birds calling lazily from the forest's edge, all familiar comforts that settled around him like an old cloak. Most days, Thalan walked, not with purpose as one driven by maps and borders might, but with quiet curiosity, allowing his feet to find the forgotten trails that wove between the hills, along the banks of hidden streams, or beneath the shelter of low, flowering trees. The land here was alive, not in the loud way of bustling cities or crowded taverns, but in the patient, steady hum of earth and stone, of leaf and water. The flowers bloomed with wild abandon along the slopes, pale violets, small golden cups, white stars tucked low in the grass, their petals shifting gently in the breeze. The rivers carved their lazy paths through the hills, their banks lined with moss, their waters cool and silver beneath the sun. And the hills themselves, they held a weight to them, a quiet, an ancientness that pressed gently against the air, like a song hummed so low one could almost believe they'd imagined it. It was along one such riverbank, as the morning light slipped through the trees and danced upon the water, that Thalan first noticed the change. The flowers bloomed as they always had, wild and sweet. But among them, A small patch of pale blue petals stood apart, their color richer, their leaves curling ever so slightly towards the west. At first, it was only curiosity that tugged at him, a stray thought easily dismissed. But the next day, the same flowers appeared along a different path, and again, always, turned toward the west. The breeze carried a faint hum then, softer than breath, threading through the grasses, weaving beneath the song of birds, so subtle it might have been imagined. But Thalan, he listened. Each day the hum grew faintly stronger, though never loud, never alarming. The stream seemed to ripple with unfamiliar stars, reflected upon their surface, though the sky above was clear. The stones along the hills showed faint carvings beneath the moss, spirals, circles, patterns worn nearly to nothing by time, but unmistakably shaped by careful, ancient hands. And the wind, it carried a scent unfamiliar, not of grass, not of soil, but something older, like rain upon sun-warmed stone, or distant forests hidden beyond sight. It stirred a quiet longing within him, not urgent, not restless, only a gentle pull, a soft invitation. The land was whispering now, not with words, but with presence. The flowers blooming out of season, the faint hum upon the breeze, the quiet shifting of water and leaf in ways that defied their nature. It wasn't magic in the grand, blinding sense of the world's great sorcerers. It was memory, the hills remembering what most had long forgotten. And beneath it all, Thalan felt it too, that low, steady hum, woven through the stones, the roots, the streams, gently stirring the oldest corners of the land awake once more. The days passed softly, but the whispers grew, and the green hills, in their patient, quiet way, were beginning to share their secrets. The green hills lay quiet beneath the afternoon sun, their slopes bathed in a golden haze, the long grasses swaying gently in the breeze. Thalan moved softly among them, his steps unhurried, his eyes watchful, not with suspicion, but with curiosity. The whispers in the land had grown more noticeable now, not loud, not jarring, but steady, like the distant hum of a forgotten song drifting through the hills. It was not the sort of thing one could point to with certainty, but it was there, the way the wild flowers turned ever so slightly as he passed, their pale faces tilted toward his footsteps, the way the shadows of the trees seemed to stretch, not ominous, but expectant, as if the forest itself was leaning in to listen, and always. That hum, low, melodic, woven through the breeze, the grass, the soft ripple of streams winding their way through the hills. It wasn't long before Thalan noticed something more. It happened at twilight, as the sun sank low behind the western ridges, casting the land in soft orange and violet light. He stood upon a high hilltop, the earth warm beneath his boots, the sky vast and quiet overhead. And there, near the forest's edge, a faint glow. It hovered just beyond the tree line, small, delicate, shifting gently as if caught upon an unseen breeze. Thalan watched for a long moment, his heart calm, his curiosity steady. The glow did not flicker like flame, nor pulse like torchlight. It drifted, soft, ethereal, like the afterimage of moonlight upon water. Without haste, he descended the slope, weaving through the grasses, following the quiet pull of the glow. The trees welcomed him into their cool shade, their branches swaying faintly above, the leaves whispering secrets only the land could understand. And there, upon the mossy ground, half buried beneath ivy and fern, something waited, an object, small, worn by time, but unmistakably crafted, a stone, smooth and oval, carved with delicate spirals, faint lines circling outward like ripples upon a pond. The glow hovered softly above it, pulsing faintly with each gentle breath of the earth. Thalan knelt, his fingers brushing the cool surface of the stone. Warmth stirred beneath his touch, not heat, but the steady warmth of something remembered. The hum deepened, the trees above stilled, the leaves holding their breath. Even the soft trickle of the nearby stream paused, as if the land itself had leaned closer. The carvings upon the stone shimmered faintly, their spirals glowing with quiet light, not bright, but steady, ancient. Thalan turned the stone gently in his hand, the patterns familiar, though he could not say why. Old stories stirred in his mind, fragments of song, whispers of those who walked these hills long before the world called them the Shire. The glow drifted higher, circling him gently, like a curious moth drawn to a lantern's light. The forest responded, the grasses parted softly around him, though no wind stirred. The water in the stream reflected unfamiliar stars, constellations not seen in the sky above, but woven from forgotten memory, rippling upon its surface. Thalan stood slowly, the stone cradled in his palm, the hum steady now, woven through him as much as through the land. He did not run. There was no fear here, only wonder, quiet, patient, ancient. The glow drifted along a narrow path between the trees, its silvery light illuminating mossy stones and overgrown roots. Thalan followed. The path wound gently through the forest, the light leading him deeper, though never far from the familiar hum of the hills. And as he walked, the signs of old things whispered from the edges of sight. Faint carvings upon tree trunks, spirals and circles etched with careful, ancient hands. Stones half buried in moss, their surfaces marked with symbols the world had chosen to forget. The leaves rustled softly, though no breeze stirred them, and the earth beneath his boots pulsed faintly with each step. The glow paused ahead, hovering above a small clearing tucked deep within the woods. At its center, a standing stone, tall, weathered, its surface carved with the same spirals, the same gentle curves that marked the stone in Thalan's hand. The glow settled softly atop the standing stone, its light sinking into the carvings, illuminating them with quiet grace. The hum deepened. The forest held its breath once more. Thalan approached slowly, the carved stone warm in his hand, the land around him quiet, expectant. He set the stone gently upon the base of the standing stone. The carvings along its surface shimmered to life, the spirals glowing faintly, the patterns weaving together like forgotten constellations rejoining in the sky. The hum thrummed steady now, low and melodic, not loud, but full, as though the hills themselves were singing. The glow faded, absorbed into the stone. And within Thalan, the same quiet invitation remained. The land remembered, and it was beginning to speak. The standing stone stood tall and silent at the heart of the hidden glade. The faint glow that had hovered above it moments before had now softened, its light absorbed into the spiraling carvings that marked the stone's weathered surface. The patterns shimmered faintly in the low light, curling across the rock like ripples upon still water. Thalan stood before it, the carved stone now resting at its base, its warmth lingering against his fingertips. The forest around him remained still, not with fear, but with a gentle, expectant quiet, as if every leaf, every root, every winding blade of grass leaned in to listen. And so he listened too. For a time, nothing stirred. The only sound was the faint hum that seemed to pulse through the ground beneath his boots, steady, low, woven deep into the earth like a forgotten melody long asleep. But then, the world shifted, softly, subtly. The light filtering through the canopy above seemed to change, growing warmer, richer, as though the trees themselves had opened their arms to the last golden rays of the setting sun. A breeze whispered through the glade, cool and sweet, carrying the scent of moss, earth, and something else. Something older, like the distant echo of rain upon stone, or the sharp, clean scent of untouched forests lost beyond the curve of memory. Thalan's gaze drifted to the base of the standing stone. There, half buried in the moss, something new, a faint glimmer of metal caught the low light. He knelt, brushing aside the soft greenery, revealing the edges of an object hidden beneath the earth. A medallion, old, tarnished by time, its silver surface dulled, but the carvings upon it still clear, worn with care into the delicate metal. Spirals again, familiar now, surrounding the image of a ship, its sails full, its bow pointed west, as though frozen mid-voyage, forever drifting toward distant, forgotten shores. As his fingers closed gently around the medallion, warmth bloomed faintly against his palm. The hum deepened. The trees above stilled, their branches unmoving, though no wind stirred them now. The glade held its breath, and in that moment, the first whisper came. It was not a voice in the ordinary sense, no clear words spoken aloud, but something softer, older, like the quiet, rhythmic memory of song woven through the stones themselves. A low, melodic pulse, threading through the ground, rising faintly into the air, carrying with it the sensation of forgotten places, lost roads, and the patient, steady memory of the land. Thalan remained still, breathing slow, letting the quiet wonder of it settle into him. The standing stone pulsed faintly with light again, the spirals upon its surface glowing in soft rhythm with the hum beneath his feet. The medallion warmed further, its carvings catching the glow, and with it, images drifted softly into his mind. Visions, not sharp, not overwhelming, but gentle, woven like threads of memory sliding across the surface of thought. He saw the green hills, not as they were now, but wilder, untouched, blanketed in dense forests. Streams carving new paths through untamed meadows, the sky vast and open above. And upon the western slopes, figures, tall, cloaked, their faces hidden by the hoods of long flowing robes, their steps silent as they moved along the hidden paths. In their hands, the same medallion. They carried it with reverence, placing it upon the standing stone at the heart of the glade, whispering words in a language lost to time, their voices soft, melodic, blending with the hum of the land itself. And then they were gone. The glade stood empty once more, save for the soft glow lingering upon the stone, the hum deepening, settling. The images faded gently from Thalan's mind, leaving behind not confusion, but quiet understanding. The green hills had always carried their secrets, long before hobbits, long before maps were drawn, long before borders etched the world into neat, tidy lines. This had been one of them, a place of memory, a place of watching, waiting not for armies, not for kings, but for those who listened, who followed the quiet threads the land still wove between tree and stone, who walked softly enough to hear the earth remembering. Thalan slipped the medallion into the pocket of his cloak, its warmth a steady, quiet presence against his side. The hum beneath his feet softened, but did not fade. The standing stone's light dimmed once more, the spirals etched into its surface, fading gently back into the mottled texture of the ancient rock. And the forest exhaled, its leaves rustling softly, its shadows shifting back into their familiar shapes. Thalan stood, breathing slow, his steps measured as he turned from the glade. The glow had faded, but the quiet pull of the land, the steady hum beneath the hills, remained. The first glimpse into the mystery had come, not with noise, not with fear, but with the soft unfolding of ancient memory, like a forgotten song returning gently to the air. And Thalan would follow. The sun had long slipped behind the western hills when Thalan returned to his small camp. The soft orange and pink glow that lingered along the horizon had faded now, giving way to the cool blue hush of night. Above him, the sky stretched wide and endless, pricked with 1,000 quiet stars, their light steady and old. The hills themselves breathed softly beneath the velvet dark, the grasses swaying with the faintest of whispers, the streams murmuring quietly to the stones. It was peaceful, unchanged, and yet different. Thalan knelt by the fire, coaxing the embers to life with gentle hands, the faint glow curling upward, casting soft shadows along the slope. The medallion rested in his palm, cool now, but still carrying within it the quiet weight of what he had seen and felt. The standing stone, the glowing spirals, the hum beneath the earth, and the memory of those who had come before, tall, cloaked figures moving silently along the forgotten paths of these hills, their presence woven into the very soil, their songs lingering like threads of mist upon the breeze. Thalan turned the medallion slowly in his hand, the carvings glinting faintly in the firelight, the spirals curling outward, the tiny, delicate image of the ship etched at its center, forever sailing west. A soft longing settled within him. It had always been there, beneath the surface of his quiet heart, the pull to wander, to listen, to seek out the forgotten places where the world still hummed with its oldest songs. But tonight, that longing had taken shape. It was no longer an aimless ache, but a gentle, steady invitation. The green hills were not empty. The land remembered. The earth, the stones, the very air carried the echoes of those who had come before, the quiet ones who had walked softly along these slopes, who had whispered their songs to the wind and tucked their memories into the roots and streams. Thalan's eyes lifted to the western sky, where the stars hung low upon the horizon, their soft glow blurred by the faintest veil of mist. Beyond those hills, the land stretched on, and beyond the land, the sea, and somewhere, drifting upon forgotten waters, the ship etched into the medallion sailed still, not in the way of wood and sail, but as memory, as song, as quiet promise. Thalan settled upon his bedroll, the fire crackling low beside him, the medallion resting near his heart. He thought of the standing stone, of the glow that had pulsed softly from its spirals, of the hum that had threaded through the earth, steady, patient, as though the land itself breathed with memory. The quiet realization settled into him now, gentle as the night. This was not a discovery born of chance, but of listening. The land did not shout its secrets, it whispered them patiently to those who slowed their steps, who softened their hearts, who lingered long enough to hear. The green hills were no empty stretch of wilderness waiting for hobbits and gardens to claim them. They were a quiet song still unfolding, and tonight, Thalan had heard the first note. The rest would come in its own time. With that understanding settled gently within him, Thalan let his eyes drift closed, the hum of the earth steady beneath him, the fire's glow soft upon his face, the stars wheeling slowly above. And for the first time, in many long years, his dreams carried the gentle shape of forgotten paths, of glowing stones, of ships drifting beyond the western sky, and of the land remembering. The morning arrived gently upon the hills, the first ray of sunlight stretching across the grass like pale gold thread, weaving the land awake in soft silence. Thalan stirred from sleep, the medallion cool beside him, the steady hum of the earth quiet beneath his resting place. The memory of the standing stone, of the glow, of the song that hummed low beneath the soil, lingered in his thoughts as he packed his few belongings, wrapped his cloak around his shoulders, and set his feet once more upon the winding, forgotten paths of the green hills. The land welcomed him as it always had, soft grasses curling around his boots, streams whispering as they curved through the hollows, birds calling lazily from the shelter of the forest's edge. But there was something new now. The air carried a quiet weight, not heavy, but full, as though the world itself leaned in gently, waiting. Thalan's footsteps led him along narrow trails hidden between the folds of the hills, past mossy stones and forgotten thickets where the flowers bloomed out of season, their petals turned west. It was along one such path, as the sun climbed higher into the pale sky, that he first sensed another, a presence, soft, steady, not hidden, but not yet revealed. Thalan paused upon the crest of a hill, the breeze curling faintly around him, the grasses shifting like the sea below his feet. And then, from the shade of a tall oak, a figure emerged, tall, slender, their cloak the gray-green of weathered stone, their hair long and dark as river water beneath moonlight. An elf. Their eyes carried the quiet patience of centuries, their expression calm, untroubled by Thalan's presence. They approached with slow, easy steps, their gaze resting upon him with recognition, not of name, but of understanding. "You hear it," the elf said softly, their voice gentle as the wind along the leaves. Thalan inclined his head, his hand resting lightly upon the medallion hidden within his cloak. "I do," he replied, his words steady, low, carried upon the same quiet rhythm as the hills. The elf smiled faintly, their eyes lifting to the endless stretch of green rolling westward. "It's not often these hills share their song," they murmured, "but when they do, they call to those who listen." They introduced themselves as Elenian, a wanderer, a quiet keeper of old places, one who walked softly along the edges of forgotten lands, carrying the memory of what the world once held, and what it still whispered, if only one was still enough to hear. Together, they walked. Their steps wound through the hills, along hidden paths and narrow streams, their words unhurried, drifting like bird song upon the breeze. Elenian shared quiet fragments of lore, tales of the first age, when the world was young, when the elves walked beneath the starlight alone. They spoke of ships sailing west, of songs sung to the stars, of places beyond the reach of most, hidden upon the edge of the sea, remembered only by the land, and by those, like Thalan, who wandered close enough to listen. The hills breathed steady around them, the grasses whispering their old songs, the earth beneath their feet pulsing faintly with the quiet hum Thalan had come to know. They passed old stones, their surfaces worn by time, their carvings nearly lost beneath creeping moss. They paused beside a stream, its waters reflecting unfamiliar stars upon its surface, the sky above still bright with morning sun. And in the hush of the hills, Thalan understood. He was not alone in his wondering. The old places of Middle-earth, the forgotten corners of the world, still whispered to those who listened, and among the hills, in the quiet company of Elenian, the journey west was only beginning. Nightfall slipped quietly across the green hills. The last golden light of the sun melted behind the western slopes, and the deep blue hush of evening settled gently over the land. Above, the sky stretched wide and vast, scattered with stars that shimmered softly like the eyes of watchful spirits, steady, ancient, unchanging. Thalan and Elenian had made camp along the banks of a narrow stream, its waters winding lazily through the hills, its quiet song blending with the rustle of grasses beneath the night breeze. A small fire crackled between them, its glow soft and golden, casting long shadows across the mossy stones, the flames dancing low so as not to disturb the peaceful rhythm of the land. They sat close, cloaks drawn, the hum of the earth quiet beneath them, the steady song of the hills lingering like the faint echo of forgotten words. For a while, they shared little speech, only the gentle rustle of leaves. the occasional call of an owl hidden among the trees, the soft shifting of the fire. But as the night deepened and the stars wheeled overhead, Elenian's voice stirred softly, weaving through the quiet like a thread of old song. "Do you know," the elf began, their gaze lifted to the dark stretch of sky, "why these hills have always been so still, so untouched, even before your kind wandered here?" Thalan shook his head, his eyes steady upon the elf, his heart slow, open to the quiet rhythm of the moment. Elenian smiled faintly, their expression touched by memory. Long before hobbits, before men, before the world bent itself around cities and walls, these hills were part of something greater. They leaned forward, stirring the fire with a small stick, watching the sparks curl upward, disappearing into the starlit dark. They were the western edges of ancient lands, places the Eldar passed through when they sailed west, when the first ships left these shores, bound for the undying lands beyond the sea. Their voice softened, touched with the calm sorrow of memory. Not all sailed. Some lingered, some watched, some wove their songs into the roots and stones, promising that the land itself would remember, even when names and maps had forgotten. The firelight caught the edges of Elenian's eyes, their silver depths reflecting the quiet ache of distant ages. Thalan listened, the medallion resting heavy in his palm, its carved ship catching the flicker of the flames. Elenian's words flowed on, gentle as the stream beside them. They left behind places like this, quiet corners of Middle-earth, where the world holds its breath, where the stones hum with old songs, where time slows, waiting. They glanced at Thalan now, their expression soft, knowing, and sometimes the hills call to those who remember how to listen. The stars above shimmered faintly, their light drifting across the curves of the hills, the land breathing slow beneath the night. Thalan's voice came low, steady. "And the medallion?" Elenian's eyes softened further. "A memory, a key, a promise," they explained, "carried by those who never forgot, hidden, so that when the time was right, when the land whispered again, it would be found." They paused, their gaze distant now, their voice quiet as the wind. "It is not just stone and soil that remember Thalan. It is the songs, the ships, the West itself." For a while longer, they sat beneath the stars, sharing more fragments of old tales, the fading of Numenor, the first ships to sail beyond sight, the whispered warnings of the veil between worlds growing thin. The fire crackled low, the stream whispered on, and the land listened, steady, patient. Thalan, warmed by the stories, by the company, by the quiet hum of the hills, settled back against the earth. The forgotten corners of Middle-earth had not vanished. They lingered, soft, waiting, carried in song, in stone, in the memory of those who walked slowly enough to hear. And beneath the endless wheel of stars, with the fire low and the earth steady beneath him, Thalan understood. The land remembered, and so did he. The dawn arrived like the slow unfolding of silk, soft and steady across the rolling hills. A faint mist drifted along the lower slopes, curling like forgotten breath over the grasses, the trees, the winding streams that cut silver paths through the land. Thalan and Elenian packed their small camp in silence, the medallion resting warm against Thalan's chest, its gentle hum pulsing faintly with each slow step they took westward. The stories of the night before still lingered between them, tales of the Eldar, of the first ships sailing beyond sight, of the promises left behind, tucked carefully into the roots and stones of these forgotten hills. They walked through the morning, their pace unhurried, their words few, the land unfolding steady and green beneath their feet. As the sun lifted higher, the mist began to thin, revealing the gentle curves of the hills stretching onward, the streams glittering beneath the pale light. It was along one such slope, cresting gently above the others, that they saw it. The path, faint, nearly lost to time, worn into the grass by footsteps far older than their own. It wove along the crest of the hill, curving toward the west, its edges marked by weathered stones, their surfaces faintly carved with spirals, circles, and the image of small ships forever drifting westward. The hum deepened as they stepped onto the path, not loud, not urgent, but full, steady, like the low, patient breathing of the land itself. The world grew quieter still as they walked. The bird song softened, the wind calmed, even the steady trickle of nearby streams seemed to hush. It was as if the hills themselves held their breath, watching, waiting. The path led them higher, the slopes falling away behind them, the horizon stretching wide and endless ahead. And then they saw it. A clearing tucked between the folds of the hills, encircled by tall standing stones, their gray surfaces weathered by centuries, their spirals glowing faintly beneath the daylight, their presence steady and patient. At the center of the circle, a hollow, shallow, carved carefully into the earth, shaped to cradle something small and precious. Elenian paused, their eyes resting gently upon Thalan. The medallion pulsed warm against his chest. Without haste, without words, Thalan stepped forward. The hum thrummed steady beneath his feet, the stones pulsing faintly with light, their ancient carvings shimmering like forgotten stars returning to the sky. He knelt by the hollow, fingers brushing the cool, moss-lined edges. The medallion lifted easily from his cloak, its silver surface glowing softly. The ship at its center pointed west, its spirals alive with quiet light. The moment the medallion settled into the hollow, the clearing responded. The hum deepened, not loud, but vast, full, like the patient song of the earth itself, long hidden, rising gently to the surface. The standing stones pulsed with light, their spirals glowing steady and sure, the ancient carvings knitting together like threads of forgotten song. And in the air, the faintest shimmer appeared, a veil, soft, thin, rippling faintly as though the world itself shifted gently to reveal more. Beyond the clearing, where only hills had stretched before, a glimpse of distant waters, of ships, small, elegant, their sails full, drifting west upon a silver blue sea, of green isles veiled in mist, their shores untouched, waiting, patient, beyond the reach of most. Thalan's breath slowed, his heart steady, the hum threading softly through his chest, through the earth, through the air itself. The vision was not loud, not overwhelming, but gentle, steady, real. The forgotten was not lost. The land had remembered, and so had he. The shimmer faded slowly, the glimpse settling back behind the patient veil of the world. The standing stones dimmed, their carvings returning to their quiet state, their song lingering low beneath the soil. Elenian's voice broke the hush, soft and sure. "It waits," they said, "not beyond reach, but beyond haste." Thalan nodded, his hand resting gently upon the medallion, now cool once more within its cradle of earth. The hills whispered around them, their song low and steady, the promise tucked once more into the folds of the land, patient, sure. The mystery was not solved, not in the way of answers etched in stone, but in the quiet understanding that the world remembers gently and reveals itself to those who walk softly enough to listen. Together, they left the clearing. The hum lingered beneath their steps. The green hills stretched onward, steady, vast, quiet, and behind them the land watched and waited as it always had. The day waned gently as Thalan and Elenian made their way back along the quiet path. The rolling hills bathed once more in soft golden light. The vision in the clearing, the hum of the land, the shimmer of forgotten shores drifting just beyond sight, all of it settled now, tucked back into the steady breathing of the earth. It was not gone, only waiting, patient, as it had waited for countless years, for those who listened, for those who walked with care. The hills curved soft and endless beneath the sky, their grasses bending faintly in the low breeze, their streams glittering like silver threads unwinding through the valleys. Above, the sun slipped toward the horizon, the sky painted in soft lavender and rose, the first faint stars waking quietly in the deepening blue. Thalan paused upon a gentle slope, his gaze lifting to the western horizon. It no longer felt so distant, nor did the stories whispered by the land seem so impossible. They were not tales for grand halls, nor songs to stir armies. They were quiet things, old things, the steady hum beneath the soil, the spirals hidden in stone, the patient memory carried by the hills. And Thalan had heard them. The journey was not over, but there was no need to rush. The land moved in its own time, and so he would too. The medallion rested against his chest, cool now, but steady, a quiet promise tucked safely close to his heart. The stars above brightened, scattered across the wide velvet sky. The green hills breathed soft beneath him. The world, for all its ancient wonder, for all its quiet mystery, was at peace. And so, dear listener, as the last of this tale settles like soft mist across your thoughts, as your eyes grow heavy, as your body sinks deep into the comfort of rest, remember, the land is patient, the old stories linger, and even in the quiet corners of the world, beneath soft hills and forgotten stones, wonder waits, gently, patiently, ready to be found. Good night. Sleep well. The hills and their secrets will still be here when you wake.